Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, Gavin.
Good to see you. It's been a minute.
It's been a while, long while.
All right, fancy graphics out of the way. We're going to talk today about your short film, Remote, which I had a chance to see some time ago and loved, and it's one of the things I think we first connected over. Full disclosure to the audience out there, we're both Canadian filmmakers. I had spent some time in Toronto, where Marc is based, and got to know each other through mutual acting friends, because Toronto becomes a very, very, very small filmmaking community.
That's right.
So talk to me about what Remote is about, and what was the origin of where you came up with this concept.
Remote is about two people who connect via their televisions across 30 years of time, and one character discovers that the other character is going to be murdered that night and tries to save her. And I think I came up with the idea, late one night watching a Dario Argento movie, Bird of the Crystal Plumage. And there's this scene where our hero is witnessing a man stalking this woman in this really Art Deco type apartment that has a wall of glass, and he's trying to save her and banging on the glass and trying to distract the killer. And I don't know, I just came up with the idea of, like, because I was watching this on TV late at night, I thought, what if it was someone in a television in my apartment? What would I do? And that's where the germ started, and I went from there.
It's funny because in the era because what year was this shot?
2008.
2008. So it fits the mold perfectly of what Black Mirror has become. What
Sure.
So much contained sort of horror and sci-fi movies, all these terms that didn't even really exist then, that have become standards in the industry.
Right.
So I feel like, and rewatching it again last night, I feel like it was very much ahead of its time, but it had elements of things like Frequency is the movie that comes to mind, with the Aurora Borealis that causes some rift in a radio frequency, where you can talk to the past, or the Lake House with Keanu Reeves that came after your film, where they're able to.
I got those comparisons a lot.
Of course, yeah. But you're doing a weird thing with a time flux, but just this idea that, can you prevent crimes of the future? There's a little bit of like Minority Report in there, just all of these great sci-fi elements. What was the biggest challenge in producing this? Because you're essentially setting that apartment in two different time periods, right? Because I know there's some unique elements of how you put this together. Maybe discuss those.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it was finding that one location, which a buddy of mine let me use. He has this industrial chain rope company.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually shot The Elusive Man in there. We shot a bunch of short films. It became our studio for like a year. So he has this games room downstairs that we used to, hang out in.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in there one day with my production designer, Caitlin DeGiulio, and figured it all out. Shot all the 70s stuff with Sarah as Justine. Because the place looks pretty retro. I mean, and then took a week off of shooting, maybe 2 weeks, edited all her footage, threw it all onto DVDs, all the scenes that she had to interact with Ron in the present day, and then art department went in, repainted the place, refurnished the place, and then we shot a weekend of Ron interacting and George interacting with the television. So that was all. So there really was no room for improv. So Ron and George were acting to pre-recorded stuff, and I had to time it all out, reading the dialogue to myself as I'm cutting these playback footage, and that's how we did it.
So you're not doing it in the traditional sense where nowadays you probably would have put a piece of green screen on that television. And then in post had maximum flexibility.
We had no money for that.
You're actually the in camera filming the television with her on it, which makes it more organic in a way. But you weren't able to, because you only had the one apartment. You couldn't, if you had studio money, you would have built matching sets, I imagine.
Absolutely.
And then had her live fed into the television so that she could be acting in another location, have the two of two of them, the same way we're doing this, a split screen where we're both in the
Absolutely.
world together. Versus if I filmed all of my dialogue of this interview and then you had to match all the spaces and pauses correctly to
Yeah.
that's a extra big challenge on the casting. How did you go about casting this film? And I know Toronto is a massive wealth of talent and actors. How did you find specific actors for this project?
I mean, I had Ron already because Ron's my
Hmm.
producing partner, and for everyone else, and Peter Racanelli is a buddy of Ron's, so he played the young serial killer.
Hmm.
So he was on board, and then for Sarah and George, we literally just put out what's it? What's that casting?
Mandy.com. Yeah. Yeah.
Mandy.com, and we got like maybe honestly only like 6 actresses showed up to audition for Justine, and we found Sarah Silverthorne,
Hmm.
cast her, and then George, who sadly recently passed in
Mm.
2020. We met. Actually, I don't even think we met him through Mandy. It's been so long. I think Ron knows somebody that knew him, and he was a retired school teacher who did dabbled in acting, and he came in and he killed it.
What's I was going to ask too, the other word that's used in our industry all the time now is proof of concept,
Right.
where people will go out and shoot a short or take a scene from a feature film, and the idea is that that's the proof that this team has what it takes to make the film. But again, I feel like the term proof of concept wasn't widely thrown around in 2008 when you were making this, but it serves as a perfect proof of concept of what a feature version of this movie could be. Is that something that you, I already know the answer, but I'm going to pretend I don't. Is that something that you had thought about when making this film? Is there a larger version of this film out there?
There is, but at the time I hadn't, to be quite honest.
Okay.
And even when it was finished and was out playing some festivals, I really did consider turning it into a feature until I work at as a. I used to work as an assistant editor, and I'm an editor now in
Hmm.
film. And I happened to be in LA working on this a movie called Barney's Version.
Yes. Yep.
And Ron had a friend who travels back and forth, lives back and forth,
Hmm.
and he came to me in LA asking if I'd be interested in turning it into a feature film. And I thought, okay, maybe, right? He was like
Yep.
one of these angel investors, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I set about writing a script, and Jesus, multiple drafts later, nothing ever came of it. And then Mark Sanders, who I think you'll be speaking with, he was
Hmm.
with a production company here in town. They optioned it for us for, they optioned it for a year,
Yep.
tried to get Telefilm, Harold Greenberg, all that stuff, and nothing came of it. So there is a feature version out there, hasn't been made.
Just hasn't, and which is which is, sadly the majority of all film projects will never see the light of day. It's such a hard slog to make that jump. I think that's one of the joys of making short films is you sort of have the control to do something where less money, less time, less commitment is sort of required, that you're able to voice your filmmaking style. And for me, I still make short films. A lot of people will make shorts and then graduate to features and
Right.
television and not look back. Where is me, one, to soothe my attention deficit disorder, and two, just to stay busy. I don't like the idea of waiting years between projects. So shorts have always been of interest to me, and I think some things are just short films. Most of the short films I've made aren't with the intention that they could be features.
Right.
Like you, if somebody came along and said, could this be a feature? The answer is always yes, if
Of
there's
course.
money on the table to
Yeah.
develop it. Um, what are you a big sort of you're a sci-fi genre fan growing up?
Not so much sci-fi. It's more horror,
More
thriller.
horror? What
Right.
are what are a couple of your all-time favorites that got you into filmmaking or
I mean, the
inspired
whole
you?
reason why I wanted to become a filmmaker was because of John Carpenter's The Thing.
Mm.
Like that's the movie that just cemented it for me as a kid. And
Are you going to see it's playing 40th anniversary in theaters coming up soon, I believe?
oh, I didn't even know that. But
I
yes, I will
Yeah,
because I've never seen it on the big screen.
nor have I. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm excited to see that. And you can't think of a better inspiration than that film. When you're How many shorts had you made prior to this, or was this your first short?
No, this was my first what I would call my long form short.
Mhm.
Everything else before that, and I think there may have only been like, and I'm like forgetting film school
Yeah,
back in the early
of course, yeah.
90s. So I would say maybe I made 4 before this. Like,
What did
really
you
short ones, like under 5 minutes complete, and they're all gag movies with, like, a gag ending,
but that's the smart, I mean, which now would play very well on, in social media and videos, because there are a lot of
Sure.
these horror movies that always just sort of end on the jump scare. Most famously, I think, is the Lights Out one, made by
Right.
David F. Sandberg, who went on to do Shazam. And but it
Yeah.
was made for a 48-hour film challenge, I think, and just had one of those brilliant, like, scare endings that leaves you being like, okay, where's the rest of this? What, I want more. What did you learn on those 4 earlier films? What do you think the 2 most crucial lessons were that you carried forward into making
Mhm.
Remote?
I don't I did a couple of those challenges before, like,
Yep.
2 of those short films were for like, one was for a 24 film 24-hour film challenge, which was a little horror movie that we did called Sweet Tooth, so that was technically my first horror movie, and then another one we did, like, a 1-minute shoot on cell phone movie called Alchemy. Um, Jesus, what did I learn? That I need more than 24 hours to shoot a movie, for one. I mean, Remote took us 9 days, like,
Yeah.
spaced out over, I would say, 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because the television itself, I mean, we shot all these close-ups of the television, and the first round of that was unusable because of all this artifacting, so we had to go back in and spend another day shooting the television. But, yeah, I mean, time, you know, for sure is the one thing I learned you need, because I was always
Nope.
doing stuff run and gun by myself. Oh, that was the other thing. I really need a crew because
It
everything
helps.
before
It
that was
helps.
just me, really, so
As you say that, my soul is sinking, because I leave here to go immediately to a one person shoot, and I'm like, oh yes, I know it so well.
yeah.
But there are advantages now where, technology, even from 2008 to now, are staggeringly different. And the way to record sound, and the devices available, and
Mhm.
lav mics that cut noise, and don't need to transmit, like, it has become feasible that anyone with an iPhone and anyone with a
Sure.
laptop can go out and make a movie, which is exciting. But it still comes back to needing a good story. How long did it take you to sort of like go from the idea of Remote to breaking the story? And was there like a big hurdle that just, when you're making something that's so complex and nuanced as this, was there a story element hurdle that was difficult to make work?
Honestly, no, because I wrote that first draft of the Remote short in, like, 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Like, I had a 30-page screenplay, and I was quite proud of it. Sat on it for about a week before I started showing people.
Yeah.
Did a bit of rewriting, got some notes from some people, and then showed it to Ron, and we were, like, casting within a week. This was, like, February, and a snowstorm was coming in. Ron and I found a house for the exterior, plucked a camera there outside across the street, and just waited for the driveway to fill with snow. So that was the first footage we shot. And then we went home and we shot Ron in front of a television screaming into it, and then cut a little trailer just to get people excited about it.
Fun.
Yeah, and then the next thing we shot was in the spring back at that house, all the exterior stuff you see at the opening of the film. And then we got back together again in June, I no, May, and shot 2 weekends inside the apartment.
So 2008, you make this film, you
Mhm.
put it out to festivals, which was the standard at the time, and still is a large part of it. But the social media audience and streaming platforms didn't really exist. Is
No.
it an exciting prospect now that, platforms like reveal that a whole new audience can discover film that you may have thought was sort of, past its shelf life?
I really can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you about Remote after all these years, or any of these films that I've got up on Reveal. But then at the end of the day, I think, why do we make these movies? I don't make a short film to sit on YouTube and hopefully get watched. I'm always marketing these things, trying to get it. I know people are probably sick of hearing about Remote and Last Halloween and Sweetest Hippopotamus, all these other films that I've made, but I'm very proud of them and I want people to look at them. So yes, to your question, these platforms have been, great, and it took a while, and I'm glad they're out there. And I've got, I don't know if I'm allowed to say other platforms here or not, but
I would not. I would not.
okay, right. So I've got like another short film on another one, and it's doing well, and so I'm thrilled. I mean, Remote played like 40 plus festivals around the world, but I might add, didn't play anything in Canada. I played one in Canada.
Always the way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's a fickle beast being a Canadian filmmaker that's making non-traditional film sometimes. I
Right.
feel your pain several times over on that. And it's like, what more do I need to prove to you other than it works all over the world? Like play here.
True.
And that's a whole other conversation, because that shocks me that there's certain genre festivals here in our country that didn't pick it up.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I submitted to all of them. I spent a
mhm,
fortune on
yeah.
festival submissions.
With being an editor for other people for film and TV,
Mhm.
uh, does that inform you for your own work? Do you learn a lot of things sifting through other people's footage?
Absolutely. I mean, I've always said that I think the best film school is editing because I learned a lot about writing and directing just going through these other people's footage. I see what not to do, what to do, how much how much time and money you can waste on things that you don't really need. So, I mean, I try to take that with me when I go on to do my own stuff and when I'm writing my own stuff.
I find editing other people's stuff, which I do to a lesser degree, but I learn the writing, especially. I learn about waste, of realizing
Mhm.
what from the page didn't translate to the finished vision. And even in editing my own work, where you're like, I know how much money and time and effort we spent to film each 10-second shot or each entire scene or days worth of filming that we're cutting out of the movie. And I feel like that's the greatest thing that I can think, and you never want to like have the producer hat turned on too much while writing, because you don't want to limit your story. But
Right.
it has made me more aware of where to cut things on the page. Well, it's the cheapest thing in the world, which is just my time and my laptop to sit there and edit it,
Absolutely.
versus going out and filming it. Like I watch things. I remember watching a thing with James Cameron while he was in the editing room for Titanic, when they were like up against a deadline, and it was Entertainment Tonight or something, and he gets a phone call. He goes, he goes, okay, well, you're here to witness me deleting this entire scene, and that's a $2 million scene that just is no longer in the movie, that we spent a week shooting and $2 million of Fox's money to put this scene in, and now it's not. It's a very weird industry, because you wouldn't build a 3-story house and then be like, you know what? I don't like
Right.
the second story anymore. Let's just cut that out and glue these
Right.
two together. It's a very scary thing. And in that indie world, I think that's my greatest advice, indie filmmakers, anybody out there watching, is
Yeah.
fix it on the page, so that you
Absolutely.
don't really have to spend that money shooting it before you have the painful part of editing it out. And I think a lot of first time filmmakers are also unwilling to edit things out that they know they spent so much
Mm.
time and money on, at a detriment to their product. And the truth is, you have to. Kevin Smith once said in an interview that I did with him, where he said, kill your babies, meaning
Mhm.
it doesn't matter how precious this thing is to you. You need to be able to cut it up and dismantle it and put it back together.
I mean, we did the same thing on Remote. Remote was a 30-page script, and it's a 19-minute movie. So
Mhm.
there were things that we didn't use at all. But yeah, I try not to do. I mean, you did a great job on Last Call
No
because
editing.
I thought there was like but there was like real economy there. Like it was to me, it felt like nothing was. You couldn't cut anything out, right? So
No, yeah,
it was
we had to get it right. That's a whole other conversation of things that went wrong on that project.
right.
But Mark, thanks for joining us today. And
Yeah. Hey, it was
everybody out
fun.
there, tune into Reveal.net. It's free. Sign up for an account. You get to watch all this great content, pick through tons of great independent films, shorts, features, documentaries, and definitely check out Mark's film, Remote. I've been a big fan of this film for years, and I think it's timeless. I think it will always have an audience and a new audience finding it. So congratulations on this film, and hopefully we'll chat again on Reveal at some point, Mark.
All right. Thanks, Gavin.